Commander Vex Thor stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the blue-green planet below. His forearms crossed behind his back, the Galactic Coalition officer felt nothing but contempt. Earth hung in space like a primitive bauble, its scattered continents covered with what the sensors identified as dense vegetation. Pathetic, he muttered through his mandibles. The translator chip embedded in his throat converted the clicking sounds into standard Coalition speak. These humans haven't even managed to tame their own world. Look at all that wasteland. His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Krill, floated beside him on her anti-gravity platform. The Aquarian's translucent body pulsed with agreement. The reconnaissance reports indicate vast areas of undeveloped territory, Commander, particularly these regions they call rainforests and jungles. Such inefficiency in land use suggests a species barely past their Stone Age. Vex Thor's compound eyes focused on the holographic display showing Earth's military installations. Their cities cluster like frightened prey animals. They leave these green spaces untouched out of weakness, not wisdom. The Coalition's agricultural worlds would have processed such areas into productive facilities centuries ago. The bridge crew, representing dozen different species from across the galaxy, shared knowing looks. Earth's application to join the Galactic Coalition had been rejected 3 times already. The humans kept insisting they were ready, but every survey showed the same thing: a chaotic world, divided nations, and vast stretches of protected wilderness that served no purpose. "Sir," called out Navigation Officer Zeph, his scaled head turning from his console, "the human delegation is requesting another audience regarding their Coalition application." "Again?" Vex Thor's laugh sounded like grinding metal. What possible argument could they present this time? That their biodiversity is an asset. He waved dismissively. "Prepare a standard rejection. If they cannot even clear their land properly, how can they contribute to galactic civilization?" But today would be different. Today, the humans had stopped asking. The first sign of trouble came from patrol ship Eternal Pride, orbiting above South America. "Commander, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the surface. Small, localized bursts in the area the humans designate as the Amazon Basin." Vex Thor barely glanced at the data. "Probably more of their primitive combustion vehicles. They still burn plant matter for fuel, if you can believe such backwardness." Krill's body flickered with what might have been concern. "Sir, the Eternal Pride is reporting loss of contact with their ground survey team. They were investigating human military capabilities in that region." "Comm failure," Vex Thor said. "That green mess probably interferes with signals. Send a recovery team." The recovery team never reported back. Within 6 hours, 3 more Coalition survey teams had vanished in Earth's jungles. The Congo, the Amazon, the forests of Southeast Asia, each swallowed Coalition forces without a trace. "This is impossible," Vex Thor snarled, now fully focused on the tactical displays. "Our teams have the best equipment in the galaxy. Energy shields, plasma weapons, full environmental suits. How can we lose contact in some primitive forest?" Lieutenant Prax, the ship's intelligence officer, pulled up satellite imagery. "Sir, I'm analyzing the last known positions. The vegetation is extraordinarily dense. Our sensors can barely penetrate the canopy." "So? Are you telling me leaves can stop Coalition technology?" "Not exactly, sir. But the humans seem to have extensive experience operating in these environments. Their military files reference something called jungle warfare dating back centuries." Vex Thor's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Warfare? In that green chaos? How does one fight in such disorder?" He would soon learn. Captain Maria Santos crouched in the undergrowth, her weathered face painted in broken patterns that made her nearly invisible among the leaves. 20 meters away, the alien patrol moved through the jungle like a herd of elephants, their advanced armor catching on vines, their heavy boots crushing through the understory. "Echo Team, this is Ghost Leader. she whispered into her throat mic. "Tango's approaching grid reference 774. They're making enough noise to wake the dead." Her team, 12 of Earth's finest jungle warfare specialists, were spread through the trees like shadows. They'd been tracking this coalition patrol for 3 hours, letting them wander deeper into the green maze. These aliens thought their technology made them superior. Their energy shields could stop bullets. Their armor could regulate temperature. Their weapons could vaporize a human in seconds. But they'd never learned the first rule of jungle combat. The jungle itself is your greatest weapon. Sergeant Jake Thompson lay prone beneath a massive fallen tree, mud caked over his ghillie suit. Through his scope, he watched the alien point man constantly checking his electronic displays, trying to navigate by satellite positioning. The fool didn't realize the triple canopy above scattered those signals like light through a prism. The more he relied on his tech, the more lost he became. "They're right where we want them," Santos murmured. "All teams, prepare for Phase 1. The aliens never saw the first strike coming. Weighted vines, carefully prepared hours before, swung down from the canopy. Not weapons, just heavy tropical vines that the special ops teams had repositioned. But when they struck the aliens' energy shields, the shields flared bright blue, draining power as they tried to repel what the system identified as an attack. The coalition soldiers spun in confusion, weapons raised, searching for enemies that weren't there. More vines dropped. Branches fell. The jungle itself seemed to be attacking them, and their shields blazed brighter with each impact, draining their power reserves. "Sir!" one of the aliens called out. Santos's implant translated the panicked clicks. "I'm down to 30% power. The shields won't stop activating." "Switch to manual override," their leader barked. But manual override required lowering the shields momentarily to reset them. In that split second of vulnerability, Santos's team struck. Not with bullets. They'd learned those were useless against coalition armor. Instead, they used knowledge gained from centuries of jungle combat. Punji stakes, carved from bamboo and hardened in fire, thrust up from concealed pits. The aliens' armor, designed to disperse energy weapons, had no special protection against simple piercing weapons. 3 soldiers went down screaming, their feet punctured through their boots. "Contact! Contact!" The alien commander's voice rose in pitch. "Where are they?" But the jungle had swallowed Santos's team again. They moved through undergrowth like ghosts, using paths worn by centuries of indigenous peoples, knowing every vine, every tree, every shadow. The aliens fired their plasma weapons wildly, setting vegetation ablaze. But the green wood, heavy with moisture, produced more smoke than flame. The smoke mixed with morning mist, creating a choking fog that their suit filters couldn't entirely clear. "Fall back," the alien commander ordered. "Return to the landing zone." But which way was the landing zone? Their navigation systems showed 3 different directions. The heat, the humidity, the constant buzz of insects, the way every tree looked the same, the jungle pressed in on their minds as much as their bodies. That's when Phase 2 began. From hidden speakers, sounds echoed through the forest. Not human sounds, the recorded calls of Earth's predators. The roar of a jaguar, the hiss of a bushmaster, the crack of branches as something large moved through the undergrowth. The aliens' training had never covered this. They were used to sterile battlefields, clear sight lines, enemies that announced themselves with energy signatures. But this green hell offered only shadows and sounds, moisture that clogged their equipment, and terrain that seemed to shift when they weren't looking. "Sir, motion sensors are going crazy," one soldier reported. "I'm reading movement everywhere." Of course he was. The jungle was always moving. Monkeys in the canopy, birds in the branches, insects by the millions. The coalition's advanced sensors, designed to detect approaching enemies, were overwhelmed by the sheer biological chaos of a rainforest. Lieutenant Chen watched from her perch 30 feet up a strangler fig. The aliens were starting to panic now, clustering together, abandoning proper combat spacing. Perfect. She triggered the next surprise, simple tripwires connected to bent saplings. When the aliens stumbled through them, young trees whipped forward, not hard enough to damage their armor, but enough to keep them jumping, wasting more shield power. "This is insane!" one of the aliens screamed. "There's nothing to fight, it's just trees!" But that was the point. Earth's special forces had learned long ago that in jungle warfare, psychology was as important as firepower. Make the environment itself seem hostile, and even the best trained soldiers would break. The alien patrol leader tried to restore order. "Form defensive circle, back to back, watch all sectors." They obeyed, creating a tight ring of weapons facing outward. Exactly what Santos had hoped for. Clustered together, they made a perfect target for the final phase. High above, her demolitions expert had spent hours placing small charges in the canopy. Not explosives, but simple cutting charges designed to sever branches. With the aliens grouped below, he triggered them in sequence. Tons of vegetation crashed down, not enough to kill through their armor, but the weight drove several to their knees. Their shields flared and died, power exhausted. In the chaos of falling branches and leaves, Santos's team finally revealed themselves. 12 humans materialized from the green, moving with practiced efficiency. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Tranquilizer darts, fired from modified air rifles, found gaps in alien armor at joints and seals. The coalition soldiers, already exhausted and disoriented, went down one by one. In less than 30 seconds, it was over. An entire coalition patrol, equipped with the best technology the galaxy could offer, lay unconscious in the mud. Santos activated her radio. "Command, this is Ghost Leader, package secured. 12 tangos down, 0 casualties, beginning extraction." As her team zip-tied the unconscious aliens and prepared them for transport, she looked around at the jungle that had been her ally. The broken branches were already being colonized by ants. The gouges in the earth would be covered with new growth within days. The forest would erase all signs of battle as it always had. The aliens thought Earth's jungles were wasteland, proof of humanity's failure to advance. They couldn't understand that these wild places had taught humans lessons no amount of technology could replace: how to move without sound, how to use terrain as a weapon, how to make an enemy defeat themselves. Back on his flagship, Commander Vexthor stared at the tactical display in disbelief. 40% of his ground survey teams gone. Not destroyed, but captured. Their emergency beacons showing them being transported to human facilities. "How?" he demanded. "How are we losing trained soldiers to primitives in a forest?" Subcommander Krill's form rippled with distress. "Sir, the humans have sent a message. They're offering to return our personnel in exchange for a meeting." "A meeting after attacking coalition forces?" "Sir." Intelligence Officer Prax spoke carefully. "Review of the encounters suggests the humans used no lethal force. They could have killed our teams but chose capture instead. And technically, our forces were in their territory without permission." Vexthor's 4 arms gestured in frustration. "They dare lecture us about territory when they waste half their planet on wilderness?" "Perhaps," Prax said slowly. "What we see as waste, they see as a training ground. These special operations forces seem extensively experienced in environment-based combat. Our records show similar human units operating in deserts, mountains, Arctic regions." The commander fell silent, his compound eyes studying the images of Earth's varied terrain. Deserts that cooked equipment, mountains that challenged even anti-gravity systems, frozen wastes that drained power cells, and everywhere these cursed jungles that turned technology against itself. "Sir," Krill ventured, "the human's message includes footage from the encounters." "Show me." The holographic display lit up with images that made the entire bridge crew lean forward. human soldiers moving through dense forest like spirits, invisible until they chose to be seen. The Coalition patrols stumbling, lost, fighting the very environment while their opponents used it as an ally. But what struck Vexthor most was the discipline. These weren't random attacks, but precisely coordinated operations. Every trap, every distraction, every strike had been planned to exploit Coalition weaknesses he hadn't even known existed. "They're not primitives," he said quietly. "They're specialists, in environments we've spent centuries trying to eliminate." The revelation hung in the air like the humid atmosphere of Earth's jungles. The Galactic Coalition had built its military for ship-to-ship combat and open battlefield engagements. They'd forgotten, or never learned, how to fight in the chaos of nature. And Earth, with all its untamed wilderness, had produced warriors who thrived in that chaos. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "the humans are transmitting again. They say if we want our people back unharmed, we need to meet with someone called Colonel Chen. She's waiting at coordinates that correspond to a jungle training facility." Vexthor's mandibles clicked slowly. "Prepare a shuttle, and select our best close combat troops for escort." "Sir?" Krill sounded surprised. "You're going personally?" "If we're to understand these humans, we must see them in their element. Even if that element is a green hell that defies all logic." He paused. "And Krill, update our threat assessment of Earth. Move them from primitive to unconventional." As his shuttle descended toward the green canopy that had swallowed so many of his soldiers, Vexthor wondered if the Coalition had made a terrible mistake. They'd judged Earth by their cleared land and assumed the wild places were weakness. But what if it was the opposite? What if every jungle, every forest, every untamed space was really a school where humans learned to be more dangerous than any civilized species could imagine? The shuttle touched down in a small clearing, and Vexthor stepped out into air so thick with life he could taste it. Around him, the jungle pressed close, full of shadows and secrets, and somewhere in those shadows, he knew. Human soldiers were watching, waiting, ready to teach the galaxy a lesson it had forgotten. Sometimes the most advanced weapon isn't technology. Sometimes it's knowing how to use the chaos of nature itself. The war for respect had begun in the last place the Coalition expected, not in the depths of space, but in the green heart of a world they'd dismissed, and humanity's special forces were just getting started. Colonel Chen stood at the edge of the jungle training facility, watching the Coalition shuttle settle onto the landing pad. The alien craft looked absurdly out of place against the backdrop of towering trees and tangled vines, like a chrome sculpture dropped in an organic gallery. Behind her, hidden in the tree line, 50 of Earth's most elite jungle warfare specialists waited. Not threateningly, just observing. The aliens needed to understand they were always being watched in the green zones. Commander Vexthor emerged from the shuttle, his forearms twitching as the humid air hit him. His escort, 6 of the Coalition's finest soldiers, formed a protective circle, their weapons powered but not raised. Chen noted how their feet sank slightly in the soft earth, how they were already sweating despite their suit-cooling systems. "Commander Vexthor," Chen said, stepping forward with the kind of silent grace that made the alien guards flinch. She'd appeared from nowhere, though she'd been standing in plain sight. "Welcome to Camp Ghost. I apologize for the informal introduction to jungle operations. Your teams were never in real danger." The translator converted Vexthor's clicking reply. "Colonel, your forces captured 40% of my ground teams, elite soldiers with centuries of combined experience." "In conventional warfare, yes." Chen gestured to the facility behind her. "Would you like to understand how it happened?" The tour that followed changed everything the Coalition thought they knew about Earth. Chen led them first to an observation platform overlooking a training course. Below, human soldiers moved through a replica jungle, but Vex Thor's enhanced vision could barely track them. They flowed like water, using shadows and vegetation in ways that defied logical movement patterns. "Your soldiers rely on technology," Chen explained. "Sensors, shields, targeting systems. In the jungle, technology becomes a burden. Watch." She signaled to the training coordinator. A coalition environmental suit, captured and repaired, was placed on a recruit. The young soldier immediately began moving differently, slower, clumsier, catching on every vine. "The suit weighs 40 kilograms, Chen said. "Your shields require power cores that add another 20. The helmet restricts peripheral vision by 30%. In an open battlefield, these are acceptable trade-offs. In dense vegetation, they're fatal disadvantages." Vex Thor watched his own guards struggling with the soft ground, the way vines seemed to grab at their armor. "But surely our firepower advantage," Chen smiled. It wasn't a comforting expression. "Sergeant Martinez, demonstration, please." A soldier emerged from the undergrowth. Vex Thor hadn't seen him approach. Martinez carried a simple projectile weapon, practically an antique by Coalition standards. He fired at a target dummy wearing Coalition armor. The bullet bounced off harmlessly. "Your armor stops our conventional weapons easily," Chen agreed. Then Martinez picked up a different weapon, a hollow tube. "But this is a blowgun, used by indigenous peoples for thousands of years." The dart Martinez fired was tiny, barely visible. It found a seal at the dummy's neck joint, penetrating just 2 millimeters. "Neurotoxin coating, non-lethal, but your suits aren't designed to stop primitive weapons. Why would they be?" The demonstration continued. Chen showed them punji pits camouflaged so perfectly that even knowing they were there, the aliens couldn't spot them. Tripwires made from native vines that no electronic sensor would flag as abnormal. Tree stands that had been growing into shape for years. Living blinds that thermal imaging couldn't distinguish from the forest itself. "This is impossible," Vex Thor's sub-commander Krill protested. "No military could train for such randomness." "Randomness?" Chen laughed. "Commander, the jungle isn't random. It has patterns, rhythms, rules. We've had millennia to learn them. Let me show you something." She led them deeper into the facility, to where an old man sat cross-legged on a platform. His skin was weathered like tree bark, his eyes sharp as obsidian. Around him, young soldiers sat in a circle, listening intently. "This is Master Sergeant Tanaka," Chen introduced. 70 years in the jungle. He's teaching track reading." The old soldier held up a leaf with a barely visible bend. "Coalition soldier passed here 3 hours ago," he said calmly. "Left foot favoring, power assist failing in humidity. Moving north-northwest, checking wrist display every 12 steps, lost." "That's a guess," one of Vex Thor's guards protested. Tanaka smiled. "Chen, the demonstration area?" They moved to a cleared space where sand had been spread. "Walk across," Tanaka instructed the guard. "Any pattern you like." The alien complied, making random turns and changes of pace. When he finished, Tanaka studied the tracks for less than a minute. "You're right-handed, but your species favors the left lower arm. Your suit's right knee servo is 0.7% out of alignment. I can see the drag pattern. You're approximately 6 hours from your last meal. Your gait shows mild hunger distraction. You've been in gravity higher than Earth normal recently. Your steps compensate for expected weight that isn't there." The guard's helmet turned to Vex Thor in shock. Every observation was correct. "The jungle speaks to those who listen," Tanaka said simply. "Your technology drowns out its voice." Chen guided them to the next area, a medical station where captured Coalition soldiers were being treated. They were unharmed but exhausted, their pride more wounded than their bodies. "We could have killed them all," Chen said quietly. "I want you to understand that, Commander. We chose not to. Earth seeks respect, not war." By humiliating the Coalition's forces? By demonstrating that our primitive worldview has value. You see wilderness as waste. We see it as a teacher, a testing ground, a living tactical advantage. Every human special operator spends years in wild places. Not just jungles, the Arctic, deserts, mountains, swamps. We learn to fight where civilization fears to tread. She showed them footage from around the world. Human special forces disappearing into sandstorms, emerging to disable enemy vehicles before vanishing again. Mountain units moving through terrain that would challenge even anti-gravity systems. Navy SEALs rising from swamps like primordial predators. But this is barbaric, Krill protested. Fighting in mud and vegetation instead of proper battlefields. Proper battlefields? Chen's voice hardened. Tell me, Sub-Commander, what happens when your nice, clean war comes to a world that's 90% wilderness? What happens when your enemy doesn't agree to meet you in open ground? She gestured to a tactical display showing recent conflicts across the galaxy. The Therian uprising on Kepler 442. Your forces struggled for 3 years in their forest regions, the mounted guerrillas in the Vegan swamps, still undefeated after a decade. Every time the Coalition faces an enemy that uses terrain instead of technology, you struggle. So, you're offering what? Vexthor asked. To teach us to crawl in mud? I'm offering to show you why Earth's military doctrine could save Coalition lives. Chen activated a holographic display. With your permission, I'd like to demonstrate a joint operations scenario. The scenario she outlined was elegant in its simplicity. A rebel force had taken control of a vital resource on a jungle world. Coalition forces would assault with their standard doctrine: orbital bombardment, shield walls, advancing firepower. Earth forces would infiltrate first, using the environment itself. You want us to participate in an exercise? Vexthor clicked thoughtfully. Against human forces? Not against. With. Chen smiled. Let us show you what combined operations could achieve. 3 days later, in a specially prepared section of the Amazon basin, the exercise began. The Coalition force, a full platoon with armor support, advanced through the jungle in standard formation. Their shields interlocked, creating an impenetrable barrier. Drone scouts flew overhead. Nothing could approach without being detected and destroyed. Or so they thought. Captain Santos and her team had been in position for 12 hours before the aliens arrived. They dug hide sites, covered themselves with mud and vegetation, controlled their breathing and heartbeats to avoid biosensors. As the Coalition forces passed, they remained invisible. Phase 1 complete, Santos whispered into her throat mic. Tango's passed, beginning trail ops. Now the humans followed, ghosts in the Coalition's wake. Every trap the aliens avoided, obvious ones, placed where sensors would detect them, fed their confidence. They didn't notice the real surprises being prepared behind them. Tree branches, weakened with careful cuts. Vines repositioned to create natural barriers. Small diversions in water flow that would turn solid ground to mud within hours. The jungle itself being reshaped as a weapon. The Coalition forces reached their first objective, a simulated rebel outpost. Their assault was textbook perfect. Shields absorbed incoming fire. Plasma weapons vaporized cover. Drone strikes eliminated strong points. In 15 minutes, they'd taken the position with 0 casualties. Excellent work, Vexthor commented over comms, watching from the orbiting command ship. You see, Colonel Chen? Technology and discipline triumph over... Commander, Chen interrupted quietly. Check your supply line. The tactical display showed the truth. Every Coalition soldier was now cut off. The paths they'd taken were blocked, not by enemy action, but by fallen trees that looked natural. Streams had redirected, turning their route into swamp. Dense undergrowth had somehow grown thicker in just hours. That's impossible? Vegetation doesn't grow that fast? It does when human hands help it, Chen explained. My teams have been working behind yours, using the jungle's natural processes. You took the outpost, but can you hold it? Can you resupply? Can you evacuate wounded? On the ground, the coalition platoon leader was reaching the same conclusions. Command, we need immediate extraction. Our ground route is compromised. Negative, Chen's voice cut in. Exercise rules. No air support for 12 hours. Simulating weather conditions. You need to survive in place or find another route. Another route? Through this green maze? That's when the psychological operations began. Santos's teams didn't attack. They simply made their presence known. A shadow moving between trees. The sound of breathing just beyond visual range. Equipment left behind. A knife stuck in a tree at eye level. A message carved in bark. You're in our world now. Coalition soldiers, trained for decisive battles, found the constant tension unbearable. When would the attack come? From which direction? Their sensors showed movement everywhere and nowhere. Sir, one soldier reported, his voice shaking. I've got biological signatures surrounding us, hundreds of them. Humans? Unknown. Some read human, some different. Chen smiled in the command center. We invited some friends. The local tribe has lived in this jungle for 10,000 years. They're watching your soldiers, evaluating them. To them, your forces look like children lost in their backyard. By nightfall, the coalition platoon was in full defensive mode. They'd built a fortress from their shields and portable barriers, but fortress against what? The attacks never came. Just sounds, movements, the constant awareness that they were surrounded by an enemy that wouldn't engage on their terms. Your soldiers are breaking, Chen observed to Vexthor. They have superior firepower, defensive positions, enough supplies for days, but they're terrified. Why? Because this isn't warfare, Vexthor exploded. It's exactly what war becomes when you can't force your enemy to fight your way. Chen's voice was serious now. Earth learned this through bitter experience. Vietnam, Afghanistan, a dozen other conflicts where technology met terrain and lost. We adapted. We learned. We became something new. On the ground, Santos decided it was time for the lesson's climax. Her teams began leaving gifts at the coalition perimeter. Not weapons or threats, food, fresh water. Medical supplies for the bites and stings the aliens were suffering. The message was clear. We could destroy you whenever we choose. Instead, we choose mercy. At dawn, Chen authorized the final demonstration. The rebel force the coalition had defeated. It returned, moving through the jungle the human way. In 20 minutes, they'd retaken the outpost, not by overwhelming firepower, but by infiltration. They simply appeared inside the perimeter, having moved through spaces the coalition deemed impassable. Exercise concluded, Chen announced. Coalition forces performed admirably in conventional assault, 0 casualties in initial attack. However, inability to adapt to terrain-based warfare resulted in strategic failure. Outpost lost, supply lines severed, 70% of forces combat ineffective due to environmental factors. Vexthor stared at the analysis in silence. His forces hadn't been defeated. They'd been made irrelevant. All their advantages neutralized by an enemy that turned the battlefield itself into a weapon. Show me, he said finally. Show me how they did it. The debriefing took hours. Santos and her teams explained every trick, every technique, how to read water patterns to predict ground stability, how to use insect behavior as an early warning system, how to make the jungle close behind you like a living door. But more than techniques, they shared a philosophy. You fight the jungle, Tanaka explained to a group of coalition officers. We fight with it. You see chaos, we see complex patterns. You bring machines to overcome nature. We become part of nature to overcome machines. This is centuries of evolution backwards, one alien protested. Civilization means controlling environment, not submitting to it. Does it? Chen challenged. Your colony 7, the one with the pride grass plague. You fought it with chemicals for 50 years. Failed. Earth botanists solved it in 6 months by introducing a competing species. We didn't control the environment. We guided it. She pulled up more examples. Human colonies thriving on worlds the coalition deemed uninhabitable. Terraforming projects that worked with existing ecosystems instead of replacing them. Military victories achieved by understanding terrain rather than destroying it. You want to know why Earth maintains its wilderness? Chen asked. Because every forest is a laboratory. Every desert is a classroom. Every mountain is a test. We keep them wild because wild teaches lessons civilization forgets. Vexthor found himself in the jungle that night, against all protocol. Chen had offered to show him something, and curiosity won over caution. They stood in a clearing where moonlight filtered through the canopy. Listen, Chen said simply. At first he heard only noise. Insects, birds, rustling leaves, but gradually patterns emerged. The chirp that meant a predator had passed. The silence that indicated rain coming. The rustle that was wind versus the rustle that was movement. Your species eliminated your wild places 3,000 years ago, Chen said quietly. You've forgotten how to hear what nature teaches. But it's not too late to remember. You truly believe this? Wilderness makes you stronger? I know it does. Chen gestured around them. In this jungle, a 12-year-old from the local tribe could evade your best soldiers indefinitely, not because they have better technology, but because they have better understanding. Earth offers to share that understanding. At what price? Respect. Stop seeing our wilderness as waste. Recognize that our primitive knowledge has value. Let us join the coalition as we are, not as you think we should be. Vexthor considered this. And in return, Earth's special operations will train coalition forces in environmental warfare. We'll show you how to fight in jungles, deserts, mountains, anywhere that civilization hasn't reached. Because, Commander, there are many such places in the galaxy, and right now, you're vulnerable in every one of them. As if to emphasize her point, a figure melted from the shadows. Santos, who had been within arm's reach the entire time, invisible until she chose to be seen. 40 worlds in coalition space have significant wilderness areas, Chen continued. 15 active insurgencies use terrain as primary tactical advantage. Your losses in environmental conflicts exceed losses in conventional warfare by 300%. We can change that. Vexthor looked around the clearing, seeing it with new eyes. Not chaos, but complexity. Not waste, but potential. I'll need to convince the Council. They've spent millennia believing civilization means controlling nature. Then show them this. Chen handed him a data pad. Recordings from today's exercise, not the tactics, the fear in your soldiers' voices. The moment they realized their technology meant nothing here. Ask the Council, what happens when the next enemy learns these lessons before you do? The implications hung in the air like humidity. The coalition's military dominance rested on technological superiority, but technology meant nothing if you couldn't bring it to bear, and Earth had just demonstrated mastery of environments where standard tactics failed. One condition, Vexthor said finally. This training, it must go both ways. Earth learns our technology, we learn your wilderness ways. Chen smiled. Commander, that's exactly what we hoped for. Imagine coalition shields powered by soldiers who can disappear into any terrain. Plasma weapons in the hands of troops who strike from shadows. Your technology, our techniques. She extended her hand, a curious human gesture. After a moment, Vexthor placed one of his 4 hands in hers. The Council will resist, he warned. They see order and control as the pillars of civilization. Then we'll show them that chaos and adaptation have their own strength. Chen's grip was firm. Welcome to Earth's classroom, Commander. First lesson, sometimes the most advanced strategy is remembering the oldest skills. Around them, the jungle sang its ancient song. Predator and prey, growth and decay. A million small wars and alliances playing out in the green depths. The coalition had come to Earth seeing emptiness. They were beginning to understand it was fuller than they'd ever imagined. And in that fullness, in that wild chaos humanity refused to tame, lay powers the galaxy had forgotten existed. The age of purely technological warfare was ending. The age of environmental combat was about to begin. And Earth's special forces would write its textbook in mud, shadows, and the patient teachings of the wild. 6 months after the jungle demonstration, the Galactic Coalition faced its greatest crisis in a millennium. The hegemony of Sorrow, a xenophobic empire from beyond the Rim, had invaded Coalition space with a terrifying new strategy. They didn't attack cities or shipyards. They seized wilderness worlds. Commander Vexthor stood in the Coalition War Council, his forearms gesturing at the holographic display. Red markers showed hegemony positions across 17 worlds, all following the same pattern. They take planets we've ignored, he reported. Worlds deemed too wild for proper colonization. They dig in, disappear into the terrain, and launch strikes at will. Our forces can't engage them effectively. High Admiral Zorax, a crystalline being whose species hadn't touched natural ground in 10,000 years, resonated with frustration. Bomb them from orbit. Burn away their cover. We tried that at Kepler 62F, Vexthor replied. The ecological damage made the planet worthless, and the enemy simply moved to cave systems. They're still there, still launching raids. Impossible, Counselor Mesh interjected, her synthetic voice crackling. No military force can sustain operations without proper infrastructure. The hegemony can. They're using tactics we don't understand. Surviving off the land. Moving through terrain our sensors can't penetrate, striking and vanishing like Earth's special forces. Sub-Commander Krill finished quietly. Silence fell over the council. In the months since Earth's demonstration, the Coalition had resisted implementing human wilderness training. Too primitive, they said, too backwards. Now that resistance was costing lives. The humans did warn us, Vexthor said carefully. They offered to train our forces in environmental warfare. And reduce our soldiers to mud-crawling savages? Admiral Zorax's form pulsed with indignation. Never. Then we lose. The new voice came from the chamber entrance. Colonel Chen walked in, uninvited but unchallenged. Behind her stood General Harrison, Earth's military liaison, and Master Sergeant Tanaka. Humans are not council members, Mesh protested. No, but we're the only ones who can save you. Chen activated her own display, showing intelligence Earth had gathered. The hegemony studied our jungle demonstration. They learned our tactics, adapted them to their physiology. They're fighting an environmental war, and you're trying to counter with conventional means. She showed footage from recent battles. Hegemony forces moving through swamps like ghosts. Coalition patrols vanishing in forests. Supply convoys ambushed in canyons where sensors failed. They learned from watching us, Chen continued. But they only learned the surface techniques. They don't understand the philosophy. That's why Earth can stop them. Earth isn't even a coalition member, Admiral Zorax reminded coldly. Then make us one. General Harrison stepped forward. Full membership, with our wilderness intact. In exchange, we deploy our Special Operations Forces immediately. The Council erupted in debate. Some demanded Earth conform to coalition standards first. Others argued for emergency exceptions. The crystalline beings insisted technology would eventually triumph. Vexthor cut through the chaos. While we debate, 3 more colonies have gone dark. The hegemony is winning because they adapted faster than us. Earth offers a solution. I move for emergency membership pending successful military intervention. The vote was closer than it should have been. Pride nearly doomed the coalition. But fear won by a single voice. Earth is provisionally accepted, Mesh announced reluctantly. Your forces have authorization to engage. Prove your primitive methods can succeed where our technology has failed. Chen smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Primitive? Counselor, you're about to receive an education. Within 12 hours, Earth's response began. Not with massive fleet movements or orbital platforms, but with small teams deploying to 17 different worlds, each unit specialized in that planet's specific environment. Desert teams to Sigma Draconis, Arctic specialists to the frozen worlds, and to Verdant 7, where the hegemony's main force sheltered in continent-spanning jungles, Earth sent its best. Captain Santos led the first wave, 200 operators drawn from Earth's most elite units. They inserted via stealth pods, scattering across the jungle like seeds. No grand landing, no established base. They simply disappeared into the green. Ghost lead to all teams, Santos whispered into her comms. Remember, we're not here to fight the hegemony. We're here to teach them they chose the wrong classroom. The hegemony had indeed learned from Earth's demonstration. Their soldiers moved quietly through the undergrowth, used natural materials for camouflage, set traps using native resources. But they'd learned like students copying a test, understanding the what, not the why. Specialist Kumar watched a hegemony patrol from his hide 20 meters away. The aliens moved well for beginners, checking wind direction, avoiding dry leaves. But they moved in patterns, checking the same angles, following the same spacing they'd observed in Earth's demonstrations. Predictability in the jungle was death. Kumar clicked his tongue softly, a sound that matched the local tree frogs. Around the patrol, his team acknowledged. They'd been shadowing these hegemony forces for 3 days, learning their adaptations, finding their limits. The aliens had copied human tactics, but they hadn't lived them. They knew to check for footprints, but didn't know how to age them. They could build traps, but not read which game trails would become escape routes. They could hide from sensors, but not from eyes trained by decades in the green. Execute Phase 1, Santos ordered. Across Verdant 7, Earth forces began their teaching moment, not with attacks, but with presence. Hegemony soldiers would find human boot prints inside their perimeter, left deliberately. Equipment would go missing and reappear in impossible places. Messages carved in trees. Your students in our school. The psychological impact was immediate. The hegemony had thought themselves masters of the new warfare. Now they realized they were amateurs facing professors. On the 5th day, Santos authorized first contact, not kills, demonstrations. Hegemony sentries would blink to find human soldiers standing beside them, weapons lowered but ready. The message clear. We could have killed you. Learn from this. Some hegemony troops fired in panic. The humans vanished before plasma bolts struck, leaving only empty air and rustling leaves. Others froze, training warring with fear. Those who surrendered were treated well, given water, medical care, then released with a simple message. Tell your commanders the jungle has masters. The hegemony response was predictable. They fortified, pulled forces into defensible positions, tried to turn the jungle into a conventional battlefield. Exactly what Earth forces wanted. They're turtling up, Chen observed from the mobile command post. Time for Phase 2. Master Sergeant Tanaka, despite his 70 years, had insisted on joining the operation. Now he led the Hearts and Minds campaign. While Santos's teams kept the hegemony forces pinned, Tanaka's people reached out to someone else, Verdant 7's indigenous population. The planet's natives were pre-industrial, dismissed by both coalition and hegemony as irrelevant. But they knew their jungle better than any off-worlder ever could. Tanaka approached them with respect, gifts, and a simple proposition. "The invaders trouble your forest," he said in their language, "learned through sleep teaching and refined through careful listening. We wish to remove them. Will you teach us your paths?" The natives were cautious but intrigued. These new strangers moved like people, not machines. They asked permission before cutting vines, thanked trees they climbed, left offerings at sacred groves the hegemony had unknowingly desecrated. Within days, Earth forces had guides who knew every secret of Verdant Seventh. Hidden paths used for generations. Cave systems that didn't show on any scan. Which plants could hide scent. Which insects warned of weather changes. Where the ground was solid in rain and where it became killing mud. The hegemony never had a chance. Their first major defeat came at what they thought was their strongest position. A cleared hilltop with perfect fields of fire. Colonel Rax, commanding, had copied Earth's defensive principles perfectly. Overlapping zones, natural barriers enhanced with technology, supplies for a month-long siege. He hadn't counted on the trees themselves joining the battle. The natives showed Earth forces which vines, when cut in specific patterns, would contract as they dried. Over 3 nights, human engineers prepared hundreds of trees around the perimeter. When the signal came, those trees fell with orchestrated precision. Not to crush, to confuse. Suddenly, the hegemony's clear fire zones were maze of timber, their vehicles trapped, their formations disrupted. In the chaos, Santos's teams struck from 6 directions at once, using the fallen trees as highways. The battle lasted 14 minutes. The hegemony's technological superiority meant nothing when they couldn't see targets, couldn't maneuver, couldn't even tell which direction attacks came from. Gas grenades filled with local irritants, non-lethal but devastating to hegemony respiratory systems, completed the rout. Fortress November has fallen, coalition observers reported in shock. Hegemony forces retreating in disorder. Earth casualties, 0 killed, 3 minor injuries. But the true victory came next. Santos offered the defeated hegemony forces a choice: continued humiliation or education. Those who surrendered would be taught real jungle warfare, not the surface imitation they'd attempted. Colonel Rax, his pride burning but his pragmatism winning, was the first to accept. "You copied what you saw," Tanaka told the gathered hegemony officers. "But jungle warfare isn't about techniques. It's about relationship. You tried to use the environment. We become part of it." The lessons were hard for the hegemony to accept. Their species, like most in the coalition, had evolved past nature. To them, wilderness was chaos to be conquered. But as Earth instructors worked with them, understanding dawned. "You don't fight the current," one hegemony soldier said slowly, waist deep in a stream. "You redirect it." "Now you're learning," Kumar confirmed. "The jungle has patterns. Learn them, join them, and you become invisible. Fight them, and you announce yourself to every living thing." Within a month, the Verdant 7 campaign was over, not through annihilation, but through absorption. Hegemony forces, trained properly now, turned on their own hardliners. They'd learned more than tactics. They'd learned humility. The jungle didn't care about their advanced civilization. It cared about who understood its rules. The pattern repeated across all 17 worlds. Earth forces, each specialized in their terrain, turned hegemony advantages into liabilities. Desert teams used sandstorms as cover. Mountain units triggered avalanches with sonic calls. Arctic operators turned ice fields into trap-filled nightmares. Each victory was swift, decisive, and strangely merciful. Earth could have slaughtered the hegemony forces. Instead, they chose education. Every defeated unit was offered the same choice: learn or leave. Many chose to learn. The final battle came at the hegemony's forward base on Typhon 9, a swamp world they'd thought impregnable. General Harrison himself led this assault, bringing together everything Earth had taught and learned. The hegemony had dug deep, creating bunkers that could withstand orbital bombardment. They'd studied Earth's tactics, prepared counters, trained their best troops in environmental warfare. They hadn't prepared for the swamp itself to rise against them. Earth forces had spent weeks in the muck, not preparing weapons but understanding water flow. Working with native amphibians who knew every channel, they'd made tiny changes. A dam of mud here, a redirected stream there. Natural-looking alterations that slowly, inevitably, shifted the hydrology. On the night of the assault, Harrison gave a single order: break the dams. The dams were nothing but strategically placed debris, so natural-looking the hegemony had never noticed. But when removed in sequence, they unleashed tons of water that had been building behind them. Not a catastrophic flood, a rising tide that found every weakness. Bunkers designed to resist energy weapons couldn't stop water. Sealed doors meant to hold against plasma leaked against liquid pressure. Power systems shorted, equipment failed, and suddenly the hegemony's fortress was a wet tomb. "Surrender," Harrison broadcasted, "or discover how long your suits remain watertight." The hegemony supreme commander, watching his impregnable base become a lagoon, understood at last. He'd tried to fight Earth with Earth's tactics. But Earth didn't just use environment as a tool. They thought like the environment itself. His surrender came with a question. "How do we learn to think like you?" "First," Harrison said, "stop thinking the universe owes you straight lines and solid ground. It doesn't. It offers what it offers. And wisdom means working with that instead of against it." The aftermath changed the galaxy. The Coalition, forced to acknowledge Earth's victory, granted full membership without conditions. More importantly, they established the Environmental Warfare College on Earth, where soldiers from 100 worlds came to learn what civilization had forgotten. Vexthor, now a firm advocate, stood with Chen at the college's opening ceremony. Below them, Coalition troops crawled through mud, learned to read weather and insect behavior, discovered that the highest technology sometimes meant no technology at all. "Your people have given us a gift," Vexthor said. "Not just tactics, but perspective. We spent so long rising above nature, we forgot we're still part of it." "The gift goes both ways," Chen replied. "Your technology, our techniques. Imagine ships with crews who think like environments, colonies that grow with planets instead of despite them, wars won by understanding rather than destroying." In the jungle training ground, a crystalline soldier, a being who hadn't touched natural ground in millennia, successfully tracked a human instructor through dense undergrowth. When he emerged, muddy but triumphant, his resonance held wonder. "I can feel it," he transmitted. "The pattern, the flow. It's not chaos, it's complexity we forgot how to see." Master Sergeant Tanaka, watching from the trees, smiled. The old soldier had lived to see his life's wisdom spread to the stars. Earth's jungles, deserts, mountains, and seas were no longer seen as primitive wastes, but as academies of survival. The hegemony, transformed from enemy to ally, established their own environmental warfare units. They'd learned Earth's deepest lesson. Strength came not from conquering nature, but from understanding your place within it. And across the galaxy, military doctrine rewrote itself. No longer could forces rely on technology alone. Every world's wilderness became a potential battlefield, every environment a possible advantage or trap. Earth's special forces, once mocked as mud-crawling primitives, became the most requested instructors in Coalition space. But perhaps the greatest victory was smaller, more personal. On a dozen worlds, Coalition colonies that had struggled against hostile environments began to thrive. They stopped fighting their planets and started listening to them. Deserts bloomed where force had failed. Jungles yielded paths where machines had stuck. "You've changed us," Admiral Zorax admitted to General Harrison at a strategic planning session. Not just militarily, philosophically. We spent so long believing advancement meant separation from nature. You've shown us it can mean integration. The universe is mostly wilderness, Harrison replied. Stars are fusion fires in the dark. Planets are balls of rock and gas finding their own patterns. Life is the exception, not the rule. When we forget that, we become vulnerable to those who remember. The Coalition's expansion, stalled for centuries by uninhabitable worlds, resumed with new understanding. Environments once deemed too hostile became puzzles to solve through cooperation, not conquest. Earth consultants trained in reading nature's languages guided colonies to sustainable success, and in the jungles of Earth, where it all began, the training continued. Young soldiers from across the galaxy learned ancient human skills updated for modern war. They discovered that the most advanced battlefield sensor was still the human eye trained to notice what didn't belong. The most sophisticated camouflage remained mud and patience. The most effective strategy was often the one that required no technology at all. The galaxy had learned Earth's lesson. Wilderness wasn't weakness. It was strength waiting for those wise enough to embrace it. In the end, Earth conquered the Coalition not with weapons, but with wisdom. They showed the galaxy that every untamed forest, every trackless desert, every storm-wrapped mountain was both teacher and fortress. The primitive humans who couldn't even clear their land properly had revealed the deepest truth. Sometimes the most advanced civilization is the one that remembers it's still part of nature. And in the green depths of Earth's jungles, where shadows danced and life sang its eternal song, humanity's special forces continued their watch. Not as conquerors of the wild, but as its voice among the stars. The galaxy would never underestimate Earth's wilderness again. More importantly, it would never underestimate its own. The age of environmental warfare had begun, and Earth, keeper of the wild places, would guide the galaxy through its violent beauty to a wisdom older than stars and newer than tomorrow.